The Lady in Crimson, a haunting by the riverside. Long ago, in the river town of Liangshi, there stood an old stone bridge, weathered by centuries of wind and water. By day, it was merely a crossing for merchants and fishermen, but by night, it became a place no villager dared to tread. For it was whispered that upon the bridge lingered a woman in crimson, her beauty unearthly, her sorrow bone-deep. Children grew up with warnings. Do not look at her eyes. Do not answer her questions. Do not linger by the bridge after dark. The elders shook their heads gravely, claiming the spirit had been wronged in life and now sought company in death. Travelers who ignored these cautions were said to vanish, their bodies sometimes found downstream, their faces twisted in terror. It was into this town that Jen, a wandering scholar, arrived one autumn evening. He was young, with a bookish face and an earnest curiosity that often overrode his caution. In the tea house, where the lanterns swung gently and steam rose from bowls of noodles, he first heard the tale of the Lady in Crimson. An old storyteller leaned forward, voice low, eyes glittering. She was Lady May, concubine of Lord Han. Beauty beyond compare, wit like a sharpened blade. But beauty breeds envy. She was accused of betraying her lord, of consorting with enemies. Lies, all lies. But she was drowned in the river, bound and silenced. Since then, her spirit rises, clad in crimson silk, weeping for justice that never came. The room shivered with unease. Some scoffed, claiming ghosts were for children's tales. Others looked to the door, as if afraid her shadow might glide in. Jen alone sipped his tea thoughtfully. He was not a man to believe blindly in superstition, yet neither did he dismiss the weight of countless voices. That night, curiosity tugged at him like an insistent child. He walked to the Riverside, the moon silvering the water, fog creeping low and thick. The bridge loomed ahead, its stones dark and slick. And there, standing as if part of the mist itself, was a figure. She wore crimson robes that rippled though no wind stirred. Her hair, long and black as ink, fell loose over her shoulders. She did not move, did not breathe, yet Jen felt her presence before she even turned. Summoning his courage, he bowed slightly. "Good evening, madam." Her head turned slowly, and her face came into view. Pale, flawless, luminous as carved jade. Yet her eyes were hollow pools, filled with grief that no words could carry. When she spoke, her voice was like a breeze across water, soft, but carrying a chill that cut to the bone. "Have you seen my husband?" Jen's breath caught. He recalled the tea house warnings. Do not answer her questions. Yet her gaze pinned him, demanding truth. "I am but a traveler," he said carefully. "I know nothing of him." Her expression flickered. Disappointment, perhaps even sorrow. Without another word, she turned back to the river, her crimson form merging once more with the mist. Jen hurried from the bridge, but sleep that night eluded him. Dreams clawed at him, visions of a grand hall, laughter and music, then shouts of accusation, the clash of betrayal. He saw Lady May dragged, struggling to the riverside, bound and thrown into the current. Her cry rang out, reaching for help that never came. When dawn came, Jen rose unsettled, but more intrigued than ever. He asked the innkeeper about Lady May, but the man grew pale and shook his head. Best to leave her be, scholar. Many who sought her out were never seen again. But curiosity had taken root in Jen's heart. That night, he returned to the bridge, incense sticks in hand, paper charms inscribed with her name. Kneeling by the river's edge, he lit the incense, the smoke curling into the fog. "Lady, "May," he whispered, "if you still wander, hear me. I know you were wronged. I will listen to your story." The wind shifted. Mist thickened. From the fog, crimson silk emerged once more. She stood before him, gaze piercing, lips curved in the faintest sorrowful smile. "Why do you return?" she asked. Jen bowed. "Because truth deserves a witness. Because your story should not be forgotten." Her eyes shone with something unreadable. Grief, suspicion, perhaps even hope. And then, with a voice like rustling silk, she said, "Then see what I have seen." The fog roared up like a wave, swallowing Jen whole. Jen staggered as the fog closed in. The solid stones of the bridge dissolved beneath his feet, and suddenly he was no longer standing by the river, but in a vast hall lit with lanterns of red and gold. Music drifted faintly, though no musicians were seen. Courtesans laughed behind silk veils, and the air reeked faintly of wine and perfume. At the center of the hall sat Lady May, alive, radiant, her crimson robe glimmering as though woven from flame. She beckoned him forward, her smile soft, her eyes alive with the warmth that had been missing before. "Do you see me as they once did?" she asked, tilting her head. "Am I beautiful?" Jen's mouth went dry. "You are breathtaking, my lady, but beauty without justice is a cage." Her smile faltered. Shadows flickered across her face. With a sweep of her hand, the scene shifted. Laughter turned to shouts. Courtesans vanished. Soldiers stormed into the hall. He saw her dragged across the polished floor, wrists bound in cruel rope. Lord Han, the very man she had loved, stood by with eyes like ice, condemning her with a single nod. "Consorting with spies!" they cried. "A traitor's whore!" "No!" Lady May's voice rang with anguish, echoing in the hall. "I was faithful, my lord. Tell them the truth." But Lord Han turned away. And then Jen saw the river again, black waters swallowing her crimson figure, her scream cut short by a rush of waves. The vision shattered. He was back on the bridge, chest heaving, sweat chilling his skin. Lady May stood before him once more, but her beauty was twisted now, her lips too red, her eyes glowing faintly with an unnatural hunger. "Scholar," she whispered, stepping closer, her robes whispering like flames against stone. "If you believe I was wrong, then stay with me. Keep me company, and I will never be lonely again." Her hand, pale and cold, lifted toward his cheek. Jen felt his body weaken, his thoughts cloud as though a silken web tightened around his mind. For an instant, he saw himself falling into her embrace, surrendering to lips that promised both ecstasy and doom. But some flicker of will remained. He pressed his palms together, bowing low. "Lady May, your beauty is beyond compare, but I am flesh and blood. And you," his voice trembled, "you are bound to sorrow. I cannot follow you into death." Her eyes narrowed, her voice sharp as broken glass. "Then you are like the others. You pity me, yet you abandon me." The mist darkened, twisting into skeletal hands that clawed at his legs, dragging him toward the river's edge. Jen cried out, struggling, but the pull was relentless. Cold water lapped at his feet, rising, whispering with the voices of the drowned. "Stay," Lady May's voice echoed, layered, no longer human. "If you leave me, I will be alone forever." In desperation, Jen tore a talisman from his sleeve, one he had inscribed with trembling brush the night before. He pressed it to his chest, crying aloud the lines of a prayer he had once copied from an old sutra. "May wandering souls find peace. May injustice be washed away like dust before the rain." The paper burned with sudden light. The skeletal hands recoiled, hissing. Lady May shrieked, a sound that shattered the night, and for the briefest instant, her face flickered. No longer demonic, but the sorrowful, fragile visage of a woman betrayed. Her lips moved soundlessly. "Help me." Then the mist fell away. Jen collapsed on the stones of the bridge, gasping, the river calm once more beside him. But he knew the haunting was far from over. For 3 nights Jen avoided the riverside, yet sleep brought him no rest. Each time he closed his eyes, Lady May appeared, sometimes weeping, sometimes smiling with lips red as fresh blood. He would wake with the echo of her voice in his ears. "Help me." At last, he resolved to seek the truth. By day, he scoured the dusty records of the local yamen, poring over scrolls until his eyes burned. Buried among accounts of land disputes and grain taxes, he found a brief record. Concubine May of Lord Han's household, condemned for treachery during border conflicts, executed by drowning, by decree of the household. Year of the Black Horse. The words were cold, but Jen's heart stirred. An execution ordered not by magistrate nor governor, but by a lord's private decree, already a stain upon justice. He sought out old servants who had once worked in the Han residence. Most refused to speak, trembling at the memory. But one gray-haired woman, a laundress who had washed Lady May's robes, finally whispered the truth. Lady May was no traitor. She loved Lord Han deeply, too deeply. When he took another concubine, jealous tongues spread lies. They said she had passed secrets to an enemy. Lord Han, he feared disgrace more than he loved her. He ordered her bound and cast into the river to silence the scandal. Her hands shook as she spoke, and tears glimmered in her cloudy eyes. She clutched at him, begged him to believe her. He turned his back. Jen bowed deeply. "Thank you, Auntie. The dead deserve remembrance, not silence." That night, he returned to the Riverside Bridge, carrying incense, joss paper, and a small bronze mirror engraved with lotus petals, an heirloom his own mother had given him. He set them by the water, lit the incense, and bowed until his forehead touched the cold stone. "Lady May," he called softly, the smoke curling around him, "I have learned the truth. You were betrayed not by enemies, but by the man you loved. It was not treachery that bound you, but jealousy and fear. If you seek justice, let this offering be the first step. If you seek peace, may this mirror guide you beyond the shadows." For a long moment, nothing stirred. Then the river rippled, though no wind blew. Mist rose, coiling into the form of Lady May. She appeared softer now, no longer monstrous. Her crimson robes still clung wetly to her body, but her face was that of a grieving woman rather than a vengeful ghost. She gazed at the offerings, then at Jen. Tears glistened in her eyes. No one ever spoke for me." Jen bowed again. "I cannot undo the wrong, but I will write your tale, so all may know you were innocent. You shall not be forgotten." Lady May's lips curved in the faintest smile. She reached toward the bronze mirror. Her fingers passed through it, and for an instant, her reflection flickered within its polished surface, serene, unchained. Then, like smoke on the breeze, her figure dissolved. The mist thinned. The river lay calm beneath the moonlight, reflecting only stars. From that night onward, villagers said the bridge was no longer haunted. The crimson-clad lady never again appeared to lure travelers. Fishermen spoke of seeing a single red blossom drifting on the current, even in the dead of winter, and they whispered that it was Lady May's spirit, finally at peace. As for Jen, he kept his promise. he wrote down the story of the Lady in Crimson, binding it in his collection of local tales. He ended it with these words: "Love twisted by fear becomes cruelty. Beauty betrayed becomes vengeance. Yet even the wronged spirit seeks not endless terror, but remembrance. To speak her name is to free her from silence." Years later, when children asked their elders why the Riverside Bridge bore no shadow at night, they would smile and say, "Because a scholar once kept his word to a lady in crimson." And thus, her tale, woven from sorrow, beauty, and justice, passed into legend.